In 2012-13, when we thought we had more or less stabilized the economy, stabilized the exchange rate, a mere hint in a solitary speech by the chairman of the US Fed sent our rupee into a steep decline and completely upset our calculations. It was a hint in a solitary speech by one person who held, of course, a very key position in the world economy. Therefore, the world is today more complex, more difficult, more complicated, and more unpredictable. The second change that has happened is countries have become more protectionist. More countries are looking inward. The smaller the country, it's becoming more and more inward. Even among the well-known large groupings in the world, countries are beginning to assert their individual identities, which is why even the European Union is finding it difficult to steer all countries in one direction. There are protests against the Maastricht limit. There are protests when the ECB lays down certain monetary rules. The European Union is a divided house. So is it in most groupings. Countries are becoming more inward-looking, more protectionist. The third change that has happened is the abundance of capital that we assumed is not there anymore. Even developed countries require vast amounts of capital. To assume, therefore, that developed countries will always be capital exporting countries and developing countries can always rely upon foreign capital is no longer a correct assumption. Vast amounts of money are required even to rebuild the infrastructure in a developed country like the United States. The world has indeed changed. It's not the world that we found ourselves in when we liberalized in 1991. It's not the world that we found ourselves in during the period, say, 2000 to 2010. The world has changed, and therefore we have to fashion our strategies in a changed world. So what do we set for ourselves as our goals? The first goal, as I said, must be to achieve what is a realistic rate of growth, a realistic ambition, and that is about 8% a year. We can finance 8% growth with our own savings, our own investment, and some foreign direct investment on the margin. Anything more than 8% is bound to become inflationary. It will exacerbate the fiscal deficit. We would have to borrow more, and there are consequences for borrowing more and enlarging the fiscal deficit and the current account deficit. So once you set the goal of about 8% growth, other things fall in place. The most important is to control the fiscal deficit, to contain the current account deficit, to save more and to invest those savings rather than spend those savings in consumption. Finance our growth as much as possible through our own resources. And ultimately, if we have to stimulate demand, that demand has to come by drawing more and more people into the consumption market. Today, there is still a very large section of the people who are not drawn into the consumption market. Their consumption continues to remain basic wage goods. There has been some improvement, but still a very large proportion of India does not consume the goods that we think in any society people should consume. People should consume more fruit, more vegetables, more milk, People should have more clothes, more footwear. People should be able to access more services like education and healthcare. People should have better transport. These are all goods and services which many people don't consume as much as they should. Per capita consumption of these goods and services remains one of the lowest in the world for India. Now, how do we set the objective ground for achieving these parameters, which alone will take us to a high growth? Firstly, well, not firstly, overall, there are sectors which have been completely neglected. The basic quality of our water, our roads, our schools, especially primary and high school education, is appalling, is extremely poor. Unless the basic quality of these things are improved, you cannot have a better workforce or a better educated people. Look at the state of our schools. Look at the state of our rural roads. Look at the state of water in urban India and rural India. Now, we don't blink an eye when we reach for a bottle of water. Hardly anyone who's traveling or anyone drinks water from a tap. Because we know that water cannot be, you cannot drink that water. So, like the gen set, which is unknown in most countries of the world, has become such a part of an Indian household, the bottled water has become part of India's household. Why? Because the basic quality of the water is so poor. If you look at schools, we need to address issues like schools without classrooms, classrooms without teachers, teachers without teaching aids, libraries without books. These are the basic things that have to be addressed if we want to have a better quality workforce. Secondly, we need to impart skills. The National Skill Development Mission, which has now metamorphosed into Skill India. I mean, I have no complaint if people want to change names, but they should acknowledge that they are changing an old name. The National Skill Development Mission, driven by Mr. Ramadure, is training and skilling millions of people. But the whole effort has to be multiplied 10 times, 20 times over the next 5 to 10 years. We need to skill 500 million people in this country. And we perhaps will achieve skilling about 7 or 8 million a year. When are we going to reach 500 million? Unless you take the skilling program to a new level. Better infrastructure, I mentioned roads, but I would say the same thing about power. They are so basic to build a strong economy. And above all, we must pay attention to quality. Why do we assume that after the monsoon, the road will be damaged? It's only in India that we assume that after the rains, the road will be damaged. There are countries of the world where it rains practically every day. There are countries where it snows for 3-4 months. Still, the roads are not damaged. The surface is still good. The riding surface is still good. The same thing applies to very many things. Continue to remain on the path of fiscal prudence, promoting savings, increasing investments, being more diligent and punctual in implementing projects, emphasizing quality and delivery on time. It's possible to get back to the 8% growth in about 2-3 years. I was very confident, and I remain confident, despite the change of government, I remain confident that if we remain firmly on this path, we will get back to 8% growth in about 2 or 3 years. And if there are no slippages, either because of external reasons or because of our own mistakes, we can remain on that path of 8% growth for the next 20 or 30 years. Thank you.